Welcome to this launch of the anthology, Women Leaders, Empowering Female Entrepreneurs. My name is Katarina Rolfsdotter Jansson. I am chair of the independent Swedish think tank Global Utmaning. And Global Utmaning translates to Global Challenge in English. And I'll be moderating this event here today. The Women Leaders Initiative is a capacity building project, and it's supporting female entrepreneurs, and it aims at strengthening the economic position of women, working towards financial independence, and also changing of systems that prevents female entrepreneurs and women to explore their full potential. The project started in 2020, and it's now coming to an end. And today we are launching the anthology that has been created by people involved in the project. The anthology is divided into 6 different chapters. You can, of course, download it. We have it present here in the studio in Stockholm, but you will have a link so you can download the PDF, of course. And the 6 themes are as follows: hinders for female entrepreneurship, social entrepreneurship as a catalyst for change, the need of research and data, leadership as the basis for economic empowerment, social entrepreneurship and leadership in the context of tech and innovation, and also women's leadership in the context of climate change. Really, really interesting chapters, right? So the authors of this anthology all have different perspectives. They come from different walks of life, from different parts of the world. Some are with us here in the studio in Stockholm, but most of the authors are with us via link from different parts of the world. And today is a very special day here in the European Union because we are voting today on gender equality in the European Parliament. And there are members of the Parliament pushing for EU countries to take practical steps that ensure that women have the same access to the labor market as men, and with equal pay and equal rights in the workplace. And that vote is actually taking place right now as we speak. So tonight we will know how it went. It is now my great honor and pleasure to introduce the keynote speaker. And I'm now giving the floor to Lauren Gula. She is Senior Manager, Social Sustainability and Women's Empowerment at the United Nations Global Compact.
Hello, and thank you for inviting me to join today's special event marking the launch of the Women Leaders Anthology. I'm joining you today from the UN Global Compact in New York, but one that really stood out during the pandemic is the motherhood penalty. Women stepped away from the workplace at alarming rates to care for children, the elderly, and the sick. Women entrepreneurs and business owners also struggled to juggle work and care responsibilities and face additional barriers to starting and growing their business, including access to networks, technology, and finance. It is shocking that in 2020, as little as 2.3% of the global venture capital was allocated to women-led startups. But what I love about the Women Leaders Anthology is the focus on the opportunity that advancing gender equality, and in particular empowering women entrepreneurs, presents. Women are uniquely close to and well-placed to solve the world's greatest challenges, from the climate crisis to access to education to economic inequality. And nothing articulates the opportunity to change the world through gender equality better than the stories of innovating, trailblazing women leaders featured throughout the report. At the UN Global Compact, we are committed to doubling down on our efforts to support companies in taking action to advance gender equality. Our Target Gender Equality program has expanded to 44 countries and is focused on helping companies set and meet ambitious targets for women's representation and leadership in business. The program helps companies unpack how to make progress towards their targets, and participating companies have reported over 300 actions to date, from updating recruitment policies, to opening childcare facilities, to launching an inclusive language training program to tackle gender stereotypes. We are also in the process of developing a workstream on gender-responsive procurement and women's entrepreneurship to help companies implement their commitment to gender equality across their value chains. There is certainly much work to be done, but we are optimistic that we can speed up the pace of change. And we know that we will go faster and farther together. So I thank you for your partnership, and I warmly invite you to join the Global Compact. Thank you for the opportunity to join today's event, and congratulations on the groundbreaking Women's Leadership Anthology. All the best.
Strengthening their economic position and participation in the long run. And we kickstarted this project in October 2020. It's a joint project between the independent think tank Global Utmaning and also Reach for Change, as Katarina mentioned. And we kickstarted it with a mapping of structural obstacles for female entrepreneurs, just to better understand the landscape that these women are operating in. See if we can get the next slide. And the mapping consisted of a literary review as well as a 5 in-depth interviews with investors and researchers. And we did a survey as well that Ida will tell you more about. But the conclusions in the, let's see if this works now. No. The conclusions in the mapping, we categorized them into 5 different themes. Limiting access to capital, limiting structures, and limiting systems, as well as a limited trust in women's capacity to be entrepreneurs. But before I go into all that, could you tell us a bit more about the survey and the findings you got?
Yes, of course. So to accompany the desk review, we performed a survey with female social entrepreneurs from the Reach for Change network, as well as the She Entrepreneurs network from the Swedish Institute. 82 women from all around the world responded to the survey, with the largest groups operating in Ghana, Ethiopia, and Sweden. However, many other countries such as Jordan and Egypt were represented as well. And of these women, as many as 50% stated that they had faced obstacles in their entrepreneurial journeys simply because of them being female entrepreneurs. And among these obstacles, the main ones related to them not being taken seriously as female founders, challenges related to cultural norms, such as the notion that women should stay in the home and them not being seen as business leaders in their communities. General prejudice and discrimination, such as sexual discrimination, and a lack of trust in their abilities, meaning that they've had to push harder to prove themselves, as well as a larger pressure to perform compared to their male counterparts. See if we can change the slide here. Yes. So connecting back to the structural barriers that Tove mentioned earlier, all of them were, of course, also something that the women responding to the survey confirmed. The testimonials coming through supported the desk review in that female entrepreneurs face challenges that their male counterparts do not. Now, 82 respondents might not be enough to form a basis for talking about challenges and barriers for female entrepreneurs in general. However, they are enough to represent the key challenges that we have identified. And so the results from the survey are to be seen as highlighting these obstacles from the entrepreneur's perspective, while still keeping in mind that there might be other barriers and factors that are not fully represented in this context. And these are just a few examples, but several of the women stated that they were not taken seriously simply because they were women and had issues raising capital because of gender norms in their country. And a supportive network was also highlighted by many of the women as a key to succeeding and responding to these challenges. But Tove, maybe you can tell us more about these categories that we've identified.
Absolutely. Sure. Let's see if I can get them here. Here you have the 4 different categories. And these lay the foundation for the entire project and the activities that we have done so far. Starting in the beginning there in the left-hand corner, you have limiting access to capital, which it's quite straightforward, really, and can more or less be seen as a symptom of the other obstacles categorized in these themes. Access to capital is, of course, crucial for survival of newly found businesses, especially in the startup phase. This is no surprise to anyone, I think. And access to capital for women is a very large issue that touches upon several different phases of life, and not only venture capital, but venture capital speaks a very clear language. In 2019, only 3% of the global venture capital went to female-founded businesses. And as Laura Gula mentioned in her keynote, it's been a decrease since the start of the pandemic, and it's a 27% decrease from 3, so we're down on 2 point something. It prohibits women to start their own businesses. And this addresses the investor community really more than anything, because the unconscious gender bias against female entrepreneurs is still strong. And the other category here is limiting systems. And this makes it harder for women to pursue entrepreneurship. And under this category, we have the gender pay gap as one reason, and a gendered labor market as an underlying reason why women can't really access the capital they need. If they don't get investments, they need it from another. They need it another way, and it makes it harder with a gendered pay gap. And at the same time, you also have the fact that women own less, to a less extent than men. It comes to savings and land and so on. The third theme is limiting structures. And under this category, we have norms and stereotypes, discrimination, and so on. And the women's status within the family also ties up with the norms and stereotypes that's projected on women. And it's common that women in the search of investments face discrimination in the form of sexual harassment and racism and ageism and so on. Another thing that ties up to this is also the financial illiteracy among women. And this naturally raises the bar for women to pursue entrepreneurship. If we go to the fourth category here, limited trust, the prejudice against women is reflected in the low level of confidence in their ability to be business leaders. And research shows that women and other minorities as well are faced with a different set of questions when they approach investors. And also they're evaluated from a perception of risk and not perspective of risk, and their personal characteristics more than anything. And this also ties up to social networks in combination with lack of role models. So representation is key to tackle this. But this is just a very brief overview of the findings in the mapping. Maybe you could tell us a bit more about the capacity development program that this led up to.
With pleasure. As part of the Women Leaders Initiative, we decided to run a capacity building program for female social entrepreneurs. And so 8 founders from Ghana, Tanzania, Ethiopia, and Senegal have, during the past 9 months, received coaching to build their leadership skills, to support them in handling these challenges so often faced by female entrepreneurs. And the women, although all being social entrepreneurs, come from different backgrounds and sectors, from engineering to banking to public health. These women have formed organizations to improve the world for future generations. Our lead consultant, Yawa, and her team from the Leading Ladies Network have coached the women based on their needs, both in individual sessions and group sessions, so that each woman could address their specific challenges, as well as learning from each other's experiences. And you will also hear from Yawa later this afternoon. And so far, the entrepreneurs who have participated in the program have highlighted that the activities have led to and supporting them in networking, as well as created a safe space for them to share and exchange their experiences and knowledge. And we're wrapping up the support as we speak, so we look forward to sharing the results with you soon. But in the meantime, you can, of course, read more about these women in the anthology that we're launching today.
Yeah. And they are also the authors of the first chapter in the anthology, so you can read that as well. And before we move on to the anthology, we would like to just address the other activities that we've done in regards to advocacy and awareness raising. And all of our dialogues have pretty much looked like this. It's been a Zoom view all the way. And in the first roundtable, we discussed the findings in the mapping with representatives from academia and investors and other decision makers and entrepreneurs, just to better understand the findings. And they worked as a reference group to move on. And we have also the main or the most acute issue is, as I said, the lack of capital, as outlined before. But this naturally has been addressed throughout the entire project for us, because it's a very important conversation to have. And numbers from the Global Gender Gap Report this year shows that at current rate, current progress, we will have equal opportunity in terms of economic participation and opportunity in 268 years. And that's a very long time when we don't really have time to wait for that. So we have, it's very important to continue the conversation on these topics. So this has been we've highlighted this in a different ways during the project, and we really want to highlight the need and also the sense of urgency here. So we've published a few opinion pieces, and it's been the topic of our written statements to UN ECOSOC and Commission on the Status of Women and so on, and also during our event at the UN 59th session for Commission of Social Development. And also to continue the conversation in regard to the category limiting systems, we moved away from the general global setting that the project focused on to begin with the thought that the obstacles that women face in their context is reflected globally, and the mapping showed that this is accurate, and it's still important to work with, but the system, the way that the obstacles in the system is expressed is different in the different contexts. So then we did a very brief but valuable regional dive into how we could work with these issues on a more regional context, and we compared West Africa and the Nordics then in both advocacy workshops with the participants in the capacity building program, and then we did a roundtable about the learnings from these different settings. And when it comes to limiting structures, as we talked about before, and also the limiting trust, it really boils down to a misogynist narrative. So on one end, you have the stereotypes and the norms that takes expression in discrimination, and you also have perception of women and her role in the family, but also as a business leader that reflects the limited trust in women's capacity to be entrepreneurs. And hard data is very important to tackle this because data show otherwise. There's no need to not trust female entrepreneurs. But the data that's already in place isn't really used or listened to. So we need to have this conversation more and promote female entrepreneurs and show them as role models to change this mindset and narrative. And we did this in this project through the Women Leaders Talks social media campaign. Yeah, so that's all that we've done. We've done a lot. And we are working now and looking at next steps on how we can continue this conversation. Because both we from Global Utmaning and Reach for Change want to do this in different ways. And during the course of the project, it's become evident that the investor community plays a very crucial role in changing the situation for women and women entrepreneurs. So we would like to focus a bit more on how you get the money out there, because right now there's a lot of efforts on the supply side of it. You have support programs and coaching in different ways, and it's very good, and it still needs to happen. But you also need to address the investor community to move forward. That's just one of the ideas that we have. Maybe you can tell us a bit more about the other ideas.
Yes, I mean, what the program has really shown is that we shouldn't and can't de-emphasize the issues that female founders are facing. Instead, we should continue to have focused initiatives that can create a space for female mentorship, for networking, but most importantly, to ensure that these female social entrepreneurs can have their voices heard. And we will strive towards building bridges between female social entrepreneurs and investors, policymakers, researchers, so that female social entrepreneurs can have their voices heard in policy dialogues, in investment rooms, and we'd love to have you with us on that journey. So, that is a summary of the work that we've done during the course of this exciting joint project, and we're very proud of the anthology and how it highlights these pressing issues written by such skilled authors. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Ida, and to stay put. We'll see if we have any questions from the chat, and if there is, I'll be handed a piece of paper here with some questions, or if there are questions from the viewers here in the room. To Ida and Tuve, just raise your hand, please. Right. Well, I always have a question. So in this fantastic project, it feels like we are almost halfway to 2030, right? This year in the fall, we'll be halfway to when we set the Agenda 2030 goals and also the Paris Agreement goals. It feels like we're navigating like this, with one hand in front of one eye, not accessing all these fantastic female entrepreneurs. In this work that you've done, what has been sort of the epiphany for you? What has been sort of the most poignant finding, or the most sort of that really sort of hooked onto your core in this work, Tuve?
The first thing that I reacted on was how little money goes to female entrepreneurs. We all know that this is a very big issue and that we need the full capacity to tackle the 2030 agenda, or just coming the way where we want to be. And by not promoting women and not giving them the money they need to pursue their dream, that's it's not very strategic.
Absolutely not. And you're onto something here with addressing the financial markets. In Sweden, only 1% of the venture capital, by the way, goes to female-founded companies. 1%. It's very, very, very bad and embarrassing. So, Ida.
Yes, I mean, I can only echo what Tuve said, of course, but also for me, it was you always hear about how women do not have the self-confidence to pitch investors, et cetera, but what's really shown through the mapping is that there is nothing wrong with women's self-confidence, rather that men probably think a bit too much of themselves. And so that was also very fun and encouraging to see that the women, especially looking at the women that responded to the survey, that they believe in themselves and they know that they can do this. They just need the trust from the community and the sector as a whole.
And all these obstacles need to be cleared off the table. Level the playing field.
Yes.
Finally. Yes. Well, excellent work. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, absolutely. So, we now move on to a panel conversation, and with us we have, I'm reading out all the names and their different chapters, and then I have questions to them, and I'm hoping that you will bring in some questions too, here from the room or from the chat. I'm happy to introduce Josephine Mary Goodwill. She's change leader and founder Young at Heart, and she's been writing the chapter titled Obstacles for Women in the Entrepreneurial Ecosystem. And she's been writing this together with other change leaders. So let's see if we can get Josephine Mary Goodwill on stage here on the screen to let her be known that she's
Hi. Great.
Well, we can hear you, not see you yet, but quite soon I'm sure you'll be popping up. Here you are. Wonderful to see your beautiful face, Josephine. And with us also
wonderful to see you too, and thanks for having me.
Terrific. With us, we also have Yawa Hansen-Kwao. She's founder of Leading Ladies Network, and the chapter that Yawa has written is called, the title, Women's Leadership as a Basis for Economic Empowerment. And she's written this together with Anna Svan. So let's say hello to Yawa. Let's have a quick, yeah, there you are. Recognize you from the photo earlier on the previous presentation. Wonderful to see you, Yawa.
It's good to be here. Thank you for having me.
Excellent. And with us here in the room, we have Sofia Breitholtz, CEO, Reach for Change. Please join us here on the stage here in Stockholm. And Sofia, you have written the chapter titled Social Entrepreneurship as a Catalyst for Change. And you've written this together with Amma Gyampo. Wonderful. Smile Dizizi is the next speaker and also author in the anthology. She's professor of entrepreneurship and innovation at Koforidua Technical University, and the chapter she has written is titled Female Social Entrepreneurship in Ghana and the Sustainable Development Goals.
Yeah, hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm so excited to be part of this great launch. Thanks so much for having me.
Of course, wonderful to have you with us.
Thank you.
And the next speaker was supposed to have been Heaven Barakat, but she is unfortunately not well today. Her chapter was Female Entrepreneurship in the Tech Industry, an opportunity for social impact. But you can read her text in the anthology, of course. And she wrote this together with Katarina Nystedt-Ringborg, who is a senior advisor to Global Utmaning. And with us also here in the room, we have Tove Ahlström, who is CEO of Global Utmaning. Welcome, Tove. Join Sofia here on the stage. And Tove's chapter is titled Women's Economic Empowerment in the Context of Climate Change. Wonderful to have you here also, Tove. As Tove Levonen and Anita Johansson just stated in their presentation, the mapping identified limitations, many limitations for female entrepreneurs, and they were categorized into 4 different groups that were shown previously here on stage. Limiting access to capital, limiting system, limiting structures, and limiting trust. So Josephine, let's start with you. You have, together with 6 other change leaders, written this chapter about obstacles for women in the entrepreneurial ecosystems. So could you please reflect on your view of the limitations, well, from your perspective, please?
Well, thank you once again for the opportunity. And I'm very, very happy to be here and to represent 6 other awesome and amazing entrepreneurs across the continent of Africa. Our journey over the past couple of months has been very revealing. It has really been supportive. And I believe that foremost amongst all that we have gained from this opportunity is the fact that we realize that the challenges that we face are, shared and are common, and so that served as supporting our goals. It's important to know that you are not alone in this journey, and I think that that's one of the key things that was highlighted throughout this program. The fact that we have so many similar challenges and we have to sort of overcome similar barriers and emphasize the fact that, this is structural. The challenges that we face are structural. And so some of the key things that came up were things like, walking into a room and knowing that you have the ability and capacity to do the work that you do and just being looked down upon just because of your gender. And so there are gendered expectations in the ecosystems that we work in. And this was definitely something that we found as a commonality, right? And so while men with similar credentials may be viewed as, confident and able to take on certain tasks to lead businesses, that oftentimes we realize that we would walk in rooms and feel like this is not our place, or the expectation is that you will not be able to perform as well as your male counterpart. And so this is an invisible barrier that we often need to overcome. The expectation for men to be able to do better, and you know, these projections on us as being stiff or unapproachable if we are wearing our abilities on our sleeve, definitely also came across. There are several challenges in the sense of, you know, people just not being able to trust our abilities. And so again, you mentioned, somebody mentioned earlier on that it is not for a lack of confidence. This is just an invisible barrier that we often need to overcome. And then you need to also think about, you know, challenges in accessing finances. And then pairing your work up with all the gendered expectations that you need to face, you know, keeping up a home, keeping a family. And oftentimes the realization is that even though you may not have these things written in a book, and you know, highlighting the fact that we have these challenges, these are challenges that we face, and these are things that we have to overcome on the daily, every day. And so again, it was exciting to see that we are not alone in our struggles, and there is a safe and supportive space that we could express these challenges and not have them discounted, but to have them, you know, sort of emphasized, to highlight them and to know that, you know, that we are not alone, first and foremost, and there are avenues that we can discuss and you know, highlight some of the challenges that we face through. And so this has been a very exciting engagement. It was nice to have everybody come on board and share their perspectives, and to, you know, couch a firm moving forward strategy, as it were. And again, foremostly, to also document these things and to have them addressed in the quarters and the spaces that are important was very critical, because these are experiences we have, and it's good to have them documented and to be looked at. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Josephine. Just a quick question, follow-up question. What has this done to your resolve in terms of pushing forward for gender equality and female entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I mean, just the fact that it's being spoken about is a great thing, right? The fact that it's not being discounted, the barriers that women face in entrepreneurship is not being discounted. A lot of times, you know, you might think that it's trivial, and so you sort of suck it up, in quote, and then deal with it. But, you know, highlighting it and giving it this importance allows us to, first of all, realize and embrace the lived experiences that we have in this journey. And it also, again, as I mentioned, it has provided a safe space for us to really talk about the things that are important to us and not to trivialize them, and to know that, you know, these are things that are coming up and being looked at as important, and that we matter. The experiences that we have matter and are important to the entrepreneurial journey that we are on. So it definitely, you know, encourages me, and it has encouraged the rest of the 6 other women that were blessed to be a part of this program as well.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again, Josephine. Let's now turn to Yawa, and she will be reflecting on the theme for her and she wrote together with Anna Svan, and she's written about female leadership as a basis for economic empowerment. So let's turn to Yawa and see what her reflections are.
Well, hello, everybody. It's a real honor to be with you today, and an opportunity to connect to what I believe is really important work. So first of all, I do want to, you know, express my appreciation to Reach for Change and the entire partnership that enabled us to work with these amazing women leaders over the past months. I think these 8 social entrepreneurs from across Africa have demonstrated an immense ability to be resilient, but also to be practical. The journey that we've worked with them on has been to help them identify the gaps in their own selves that perhaps puts them at a disadvantage as they're trying to build and scale their businesses, but also to explore the power of partnerships. The chapter that I contributed to really is looking at the nexus between leadership and women's economic empowerment. And of course, some of these statistics have been said, so I won't belabor the point, but I thought I'd focus on 3 points. I think the first is that we have to recognize that women all over the world are challenged. But I think women in Africa experience peculiar challenges because we live in a context where tradition, to a large extent, determines the path that most women's lives take. So as we've been engaging with these entrepreneurs, but also through my over decades worth of experience working with women leaders, we understand that women working in this context have a bit more of a double bind than most. And I think that one of the outcomes of my chapter is an encouragement to start the work of cultivating women as leaders when women are girls. We need to catch them young. Someone alluded to the confidence gap that a lot of women face as well, the self-doubt, the limiting beliefs that are a product of the social context that a lot of women and girls are growing up in. And so part of our intervention over this past year has been a strong coaching component to really walk alongside each of these leaders to unpack what are the internal scripts, what are the internal messages that we have taken as truths and are somehow sabotaging our attempts to scale our businesses and to give our all. But the truth is, no matter how confident women are, no matter how skillful they are and knowledgeable they are about how to build and sustain a business, some of the factors that affect women's ability to see success, whether in for-profit businesses or in the social entrepreneurship space, some of those factors are political or environmental or regulatory. So a big part of my work in my day job as executive director of emerging public leaders is to work closely with governments to get talented young people into government service. But one of the big outcomes we're looking for is to influence policy so that some of the limiting policies that exist that affect women's abilities to access funding, to have the necessary support services that will enable their businesses to thrive, get addressed at the policy level. So I've been paying particular attention to getting more and more women into public service so that the issues that affect women, I heard the issue of sexual harassment being brought up. In some jurisdictions, for example, women can't own land unless it's registered, unless that land is registered in the name of a male relative or, et cetera. So there are all of these things that exist that aren't necessarily internal limitations, they're external. And I think a big part of nurturing women as leaders is to help address those as well. I think the other point I wanted to make is that, a lot of the women that we are working with and for are women who fit into a double minority box. We are women, and there's that disadvantage that comes with that, some of which has been talked about, so I will not belabor it. But the other is being Black and trying to resource your business or organization when the resources that you need are overwhelmingly in the hands of people that are of other colors and other cultural orientations. And I think part of what we have worked really hard to do with the women is to help them understand some of these nuances and to be able to better pitch their businesses, understanding the people who have resources and what is important to them, so that the way they pitch the opportunity of investment in their business is also met with more understanding than perhaps occurs. And so I think altogether, the big opportunity, I think all of these these problems that we've talked about are actually big opportunities, because many of the statistics show that if we work towards greater gender equality in terms of women's economic empowerment, there stands to be a $3 trillion uptick in the global economy. And I think that is the imperative. That means that we need to work a little more hard at really ensuring that women's economic empowerment, particularly in Africa, is prioritized. It troubles me deeply that the story of global poverty is still a story about Africa. It's estimated that by 2030, 1 in every 3 poor person will be in Africa or from Africa. And as a proud Ghanaian, that troubles me. And I think one of the big opportunities that we have in this moment is to start thinking about women as the true ticket to solving that problem. I think for a long time, issues about women in Africa have centered around women's vulnerability. So we've seen a lot of investment in terms of getting women out of poverty through microcredit, and that is important too. But I think it's now time to identify the women with big ideas and to back them in a huge way, because that global uptick has a multiplier effect on releasing communities from poverty and ensuring that generations of children will have education and other opportunities provided for them, because we took the time and made the investments to help their mothers' businesses grow. So for me, as a mom, as a social entrepreneur, but also as someone who's working really hard to get governments to pay attention to creating the policies that will enable women and young people to take their rightful place in the development agenda, I think this work, this anthology, the research that's preceded it, and the testimonials of these women that we've journeyed alongside will be a really great contribution to helping to curb some of the big challenges that have stood in the way of women's economic empowerment. So with that, I will pause and welcome your questions.
Thank you so much, Yaba. I'll be back to you with questions a little bit later on during this session. Very inspiring indeed to listen to you. I'm turning now to Sofia Breitholtz. Sofia, could you please tell the viewers about your chapter that you co-wrote and also who you co-wrote it with, so she gets the credit due?
Good. Okay, thanks. So I co-wrote my chapter with a brilliant woman called Ama, who resides in Ghana and who has started Scale Up Africa there. So you can read more about that. And I mean, my chapter is about social entrepreneurship, but I think what you've seen now almost has kind of described why it is so important to empower this group of extremely outstanding female leaders. So Amelia Earhart, I'm sure you have heard of her. She was the first to fly solo across the Atlantic, but she also pioneered many different things. She said that women, like men, should try and do the impossible. And when they fail, their failure should be a challenge to others. And I think this quote is so exciting because to me, it's the true sentiment of why we need social entrepreneurship, why we need social entrepreneurship now, but particularly to address the poverty paradigm that Yawa was speaking so eloquently about, but also as a tool to actually reach gender equality and to reach the Sustainable Development Goals. So, I mean, that's in a very short time frame what I want to make the case for today, this afternoon, that we really need to advocate for practical solutions that can actually provide more access, more support, more investment into these women. And we also need to make sure that their voices are actually represented at policy level, like Yawa was saying, but also in the boardrooms. Why is this so important? Well, we also heard in the beginning of this session the results and the effects of the pandemic on women. We've seen, you know, of course, I thought it was very optimistic that yes, we have made strides, but in all honesty, these strides have actually gone backwards now during the pandemic, and we see that inequalities are on the rise, and this is true across the globe, not only in Africa, but we see that women have fared worse than men. Both economically, but also with regards to workload and mental distress and a number of different issues. And so I also think that it's important to look at, in this face of inequality, in this bleak picture, it also presents us with an opportunity, and I think Yawa was hinting to that as well, for us to be able to build back better, more justly and more sustainably. And I really am convinced that empowering female social entrepreneurs can be a critical piece of this puzzle. And how is that so? And that is because social entrepreneurs are often the first movers, right? They're able to plug social problems. They are able to deploy rapid responses. And we see that that's needed more than ever in today's complex world. Secondly, their interventions are truly focused on local needs. They're based on community. They are building critical trust in these local communities. And we've heard today that one of the main impediments is local norms, local cultures, local barriers. And these behavioral changes can only be changed if we actually work with the communities, if we work with women and girls early on, as Yawa was saying. And female social entrepreneurs have the unique ability to actually work inclusively. Thirdly, we see that investing in female social entrepreneurs, we invest in groups that have traditionally been overlooked by the investing community, and that makes for a more inclusive strategy. Yawa also mentioned the double minority box. We need to change that paradigm, and female social entrepreneurs represent a very solid investment case. But for that to happen, we also need to change the way we actually measure that investment. We need to look at data, we need to look at gender aggregated data, and we need to also change the paradigm of what kind of return investors are looking for. And we need to change it from only the profit side to also the social side. And that is because the entrepreneurs that we are working with and that we've been working with at Reach for Change for the past 10 years, and these outstanding women we have been working with, they are really plugging the market failures that nobody else is looking at. I mean, they have a high degree of innovation, and they are able to innovate at a faster rate than traditional corporates, than bureaucracies, than government, than all of these other sectors. And I mean, now is the time for innovation. Because we can't be doing things and fixing the problems that we have today with the same solutions that we used to get us there in the first place. So that's what I reminisce about in the book. I think I'll stop there because I think there's lots of questions, I'm sure. But please read the anthology, and also, you that are listening, spread this message. I think the evidence from this past year working with these entrepreneurs is that we see that these female leaders represent a fantastic investment opportunity for us to invest in a more inclusive world, but also more sustainable world to reach the 2030 agenda.
Well, thank you so much, Sofia Breitholtz. Just asking a quick question, follow up, referring to what Ida and Tove mentioned in the beginning, the possibilities of this project to have a longer life. What do you say about this?
Yeah, now we're back to investment, right? But I mean, I think that one of the key points that we found here is that we need to connect these social entrepreneurs into the boardrooms, into the policy-making rooms, into forums where their voices are maybe not traditionally heard. And that is a natural continuation of this project that we would love to keep working on and pressing and advocating for.
Excellent. Looking forward very much. Thanks so much. I'm turning now to Professor Dizizi. She has written a chapter about female social entrepreneurship in Ghana and the Sustainable Development Goals. And the focus is on social entrepreneurs in the construction industry. So let's see if we have Professor Dizizi with us here.
Thank you very much.
Wonderful.
Yeah, thanks so much. And I really appreciate Global Utmaning and Etuva for being able to convince me and encourage me to be part of this anthology. Very wonderful work, and I'm very excited about what you are doing for women social entrepreneurs. So I decided to reflect on the women social entrepreneurs in a sector in Ghana that we don't hear much about. When we talk about the construction industry, it's predominantly for males. You see a lot of males there. It's only 2% of females are in this particular industry. So I wanted to know, to explore their world, the barriers they're facing, their success stories, and how can it encourage others, especially the girl child, because if we have a lot of social entrepreneurs in the field, then they have to start from now. So, as I said, 2% of only female entrepreneurs, generally in the construction sector. We have a lot of women in the industry, service, and other sectors. Then I got to know that only 1% of the entrepreneurs are social entrepreneurs. So looking at their challenge, to start with their challenges, then before coming to the beautiful work they are doing, I think I identify with my other panelists talking about the sources for funds and other issues, but that is very peculiar to the developing context, that's the developing economy context, is the sociocultural barriers. I think Yawa has mentioned few of them, but the one really pertaining to the women I interviewed, where they're talking about women not having access to land to be able to work on because they are women. The issue is we have portions of land that women are considered impure to work on. When we talk about construction industry, we are talking about construction of roads, buildings, culverts, stadium, whatever it is. So you have a female that is very much qualified, and with female having the competence and everything, all the bidding document rights to be able to engage in the project, to be able to execute the project successfully. But because she's a female, she cannot do that. So I was surprised, and about 80% of the women interviews stated those problems. So I think we need to do a lot of dialoguing with the traditional rulers so that those customs must be abolished so they can make way for women to be able to do whatever they want to do. So in this particular case, capital or funds is not a problem, competence is not a problem, the confidence is not a problem, but the issue is this is just a cultural barrier. Then another one I want to talk about is the stereotypes. No, as a female in this part of the world, you must only be limited to a particular sector. You can be a trader, you can be in education sector, you can be in agribusiness, but construction industry, what is a female doing in that particular industry? No, you can't venture there. So you have a lot of discouragement. People say all sorts of things. So they're saying that you can't, if you marry, no man will approach you if you want to venture into that side of sector. And then the women get scared because marriage is very important to women in this part of the world. And then they give you all sorts of names like you're a lioness, you are this and that. So that also deter a lot of women from venturing into those sectors. Then the sexual harassment, there are so many cases of sexual harassment. You have everything it takes, but they need the social favors before you be able to get a contract. So these are some of the issues, but these women have been able to break all those barriers. They did well, they encouraged themselves. And one of the issues I came across finally is the mentorship. They were mentored by other women and also males. 45% of their mentors were males. Encourage them, and they were able to venture into those categories. So a mentorship is an area that we can look at very critically. And they have been able to contribute so much to their society, because looking at social entrepreneurs, identify these women that have been able to meet some societal needs. They've employed a lot of people. They've been able to embark on projects like they have a police post. be able to sponsor a lot of people's education. So these women are doing so much. If be able to get the encouragement, they'll be able to go far. So I think I'll end it here for now. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. I have a question about the policy, the demands for policy change that you just mentioned. How do you see the most feasible way to move forward on policy changing when it comes to land ownership? How do we move ahead on this? Because this is
so this one is much more of cultural. So we can have a maybe network of females. If the males not do that to us, we go to the traditional authorities that these are problems that are facing the females. What kind of pacification? What kind of how do you call it? They want to know whatever they can do to be able to abolish it. Also, I think the dialoguing with the traditional authorities will be able to work. They will come to a compromise. Sometimes they need to perform some rituals, whatever it is. Let them get it done and get it out of the way and pave way for these women to be able to live up to their full potential.
Well, thank you. And Java mentioned also that she encourages more women to go into public office to make sure that these limitations are.
And I think that's very important. They can lead her. They can lead her for us. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I'm now turning to Tove Ahlström to talk about her chapter, Women's Economic Empowerment in the Context of Climate Change. And Tove Ahlström is CEO of Global Utmaning, Global Challenge.
Thank you, Katarina. Yes, climate change is humanity's most urgent crisis, and centuries of exploitation of resources has created a situation that is becoming ungovernable. The latest IPCC report concludes that you risk passing the 1.5 target within 10 to 20 years. We are in immediate need of innovative solutions to this crisis. Away from many decision-making spheres, including the ones that solutions for climate emergency are being discussed and funded, women's innovative forces are being overlooked, as we have heard here today. Most affected by climate change is the most dependent on the natural resources, and its disproportionate affects poor and other already vulnerable groups. So women make up a large majority of the world's poor and are further disadvantaged by climate change. However, it goes without saying that climate crisis will have effects on all parts of the world, and numbers indicate that also in the West, women belong to the societal group that are most concerned about climate change. A research study made by the Pew Research Center this year into 2021 looked at 17 advanced economies across the world, found that women were more concerned that climate change will harm them personally than men are. The difference in concern between women and men often represented in percentage of double digits, even included in Sweden. So to conclude, women are more affected and more concerned about climate crisis than men are. Since women think more of the problem, what happens when we put women into power? A rigorous research study of 91 countries also shows that female representations in the parliament lead countries to adopt more stringent climate change policies and lowering the carbon dioxide emissions. It has also been shown that including women in leadership at the local level has positive effect on the outcomes of climate-related projects and policies. I believe that women economic empowerment and financial inclusions are underutilized tools for addressing climate change also in the private sector. And it is a key element for achieving the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. A radical shift in the investment landscape, targeting both regulation and norms, is needed. So, in the time of urgent need to combat climate crisis, we need all hands on deck. However, if women do not have the same opportunities to be leaders as men do, a significant amount of potential innovations goes to waste. So, what should we do?
Well, thank you very much to Wallström. Thank you very much. I've received some questions from the viewers, and if you that are present here in the room would like to ask a question, we have a few minutes to that. Just raise your hand. There's a question to Josephine here that came in from the chat. In what way has role models been important in this work? So see if we can get Josephine back on the screen to address the question of in what way has role models been important? There she is.
Yeah, thank you so much for the question. Yes, the role models are critical. They're very essential to what we do. The reason being that, representation matters and it cannot be emphasized. And so right from, the experiences and the things that we see growing up that shapes the kinds of cultures, it shapes the kinds of ventures that we go into. So Professor Smile mentioned the cultural barrier and, what is deemed as appropriate for women to venture into, especially in our contexts. I remember when I was considering, a career in engineering, I had a friend and a family member say, why are you thinking of engineering? Why won't you do pharmacy? It's more women friendly. And I know that they meant it in the best way possible and were looking out for me. But for me, when I was growing up, there was, another family friend who was an engineer and a woman. And so I said, she's doing it. Why can't I do it? And so, that's an example of a case where, role models and mentoring is very important. And you see it. It doesn't only end when you're a child, when you're growing up, but it extends to the business arena as well. Seeing successful women entrepreneurs that are in the tech industry that are doing really well definitely encourages us, and it helps you to know that it's not a fight that is fought in vain, but it's something that is very possible. And so, whether it's direct mentorship, where you're talking to someone or being encouraged, or just indirect, by looking at the lifestyles, looking at the successes of different people. Sophia mentioned Amelia Earhart and how, she has changed the narrative for a lot of women. And so it's very important to, again, highlight the fact that representation matters. It's important to see people like us in the helm of affairs and doing very well. And that definitely excites us, emphasizes the possibility of us being successful. So I cannot emphasize the importance of role models and mentorship throughout this process.
Thank you for putting it so eloquently today. This is really, really crucial. We have a question for Professor Smile from the viewers about the role of research in enhancing female social entrepreneurship. So let's turn to Professor Smile Dizizi and to talk about the role of research.
Thank you. Yeah, very important because very important because we need to know what is happening to be able to take the appropriate action. Because as a researcher, I've never come across this reason, the cultural barrier that women cannot wear compasses on land. So with this, we can be able to explore further, engage the traditional rulers to know what to do. And when you go to research, there's nothing in literature, there's nothing about women social entrepreneurs, but they are doing a lot of things. They are doing a lot of things. They have a network trying to encourage more women. So research is important, especially the aggregated data to know what is happening. When you talk about males and females, to know their peculiar challenges, their peculiar success stories, to be able to build on it. And also comparing the various contexts. because what is happening in developed countries is different from what is happening in developing country context. So more research into this area to be able to highlight a lot of issues for us to take appropriate action on to help women in particular. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. We have one final question before we need to turn to the speaker waiting. We are a little bit behind the schedule due to the technical difficulties in the beginning. This is actually a question to Java, but she had to leave, so I'll direct it to Sophia, if that's okay. Java talked about policy that takes women into consideration, and the question runs like this: are women entrepreneurs because they want to and have great ideas, because they cannot manage having children with 3 months parental leave and very little support? So this is a question. So is it more entrepreneurial pull, or is it more practical solution to an impossible child caring situation?
Why women are not entrepreneurs to a larger extent. I don't think it has anything to do with interest, capability, or pull. I think it definitely that it has to do with structural obstacles. And of course, caring for family members was a large part of the discussions for the women, particularly in the African context. So definitely, it's not because of a lack of capacity or interest.
I sort of expected this answer. But of course, we need more childcare facilities to make it even easier for women to take part in this journey that we need to endeavor on to create a more sustainable world. Let's see now, Tove Ahlström. And when it comes to climate and female entrepreneurship, do you have any examples of women doing fantastic things in this field, or what can we look at in terms of the possibilities for climate action and female entrepreneurship? We have in Sweden some entrepreneurs that are women that do face this challenge, but do you have anything you'd like to add or to share that when it comes to good examples? Could be globally too, not just Sweden.
Yes, I mean, of course, women have a lot of innovations that are not getting out there because they don't get the funding. I don't see the research and more research about this, I would say. But I mean, to really get all hands on deck and to get the women included, we need to have policies saying and gender inclusive, so that they can be with us to tackle climate change.
And I really ask you this question so I could segue into just mentioning the climate agenda, which is a huge project that Global Utmaning works with, and we will be doing education when it comes to climate very soon all over Sweden through study agencies and also the unions. So I'm sure this will entice some appetite for entrepreneurships when it comes to women. So now we just make sure that we get some venture capital there too, right?
Yes.
Excellent. So thank you all speakers joining us. I wish I could have dwelled longer and gotten more time for you here on stage, but we need to move on. I'm looking at my watch here, and thank you very much, Sofia Breitholtz and Tove Ahlström. And it's now my pleasure to hand over for the closing remarks to Natalia Agapitova. She's Senior Economist, Finance Competitiveness and Innovation Global Practice at the World Bank Group.
I was able to listen to the session uninterruptedly, and thank you very much for inviting me to provide closing remarks. This is a very, very inspiring event. And I work at the World Bank. As I was introduced, I work on women entrepreneurship and social entrepreneurship issues for over a decade. I've been for 20 years with the World Bank, and this is a topic that is very dear for my heart. And I just wanted to structure the closing remarks in two ways. One, I would like to recognize kind of the frontier work that was presented in the anthology, and why I think this is really a very, very important report and how it can move the agenda forward. And then I would like to have some remarks about the next steps and the actions. Several speakers highlighted the importance of the actions and the question of where are we going from there. So I wanted to also share a few reflections on that. So with regards to the anthology itself, So 4 things inspired me from this report, from this work. First, I think this is a fairly comprehensive review of what are the types of challenges that women entrepreneurs face around the world, right? So many research pieces focus on developed countries or more developing countries, on just entrepreneurs or social entrepreneurs. And so this is a very comprehensive set of reflections on what is the compendium of challenges, what is the ecosystem around women entrepreneurship, what are different constraints, but also what are very inspiring opportunities. And that's my next point, and the next advantage of this report is that it looks at opportunities, and it really taps into knowledge and experience and leverages voices of women entrepreneurs. So reaching out to the 82 women through surveys is obviously very, very useful and important. But what I really enjoyed is that there are so many fantastic women leaders that were highlighted in this report. They were given voices. And so the conclusions and the framework comes alive through the voices of these inspiring leaders. So thank you very much. And thank you for bringing a fantastic co-panelist here. And I really enjoyed their presentations as well. And the final one, so I really think social entrepreneurship is something where women can excel way beyond of the current of what is currently happening. We worked on social entrepreneurship in so many countries, and time and again, I see that women entrepreneurs are actually much more active in the social entrepreneurship space. So for example, we've done a very comprehensive ecosystem and assessment mapping of social entrepreneurship in India about 5 years back. And one thing that was surprising that we found is that women, there are many more percentage-wise women entrepreneurs who are active in social entrepreneurship than in regular entrepreneurship, like in for-profit entrepreneurship sphere. They are also performing way better in social entrepreneurship activities. The social enterprises tend to be larger, they employ more people, they have longer lifespan. And I think it's because a lot of women are inspired by the challenges of their communities. Women see the challenges of their communities, they live through these challenges, they're the hardest for them, and they take matters, when they take matters in their hand, when they work with their communities to find solutions, to implement those solutions, that's where, you know, the world is really changing around them. And I think this is a very, this is really the future. I think we should celebrate, in many reports, what I think we focus on trying to compare women to men and say, hey, there are sectors in like constructions where, you know, women are not there and they should be there because they're equal to men. And that's true. But I think also we can focus on things that women are doing better and say, hey, there's fantastic social entrepreneurs, right? And sometimes maybe instead of pushing them in male-dominating sectors, we should really leverage their potential also in sectors where they excel just by the nature of being committed to the community, being often more attuned to the community needs. And so, for example, the childcare challenges that were discussed today, the climate challenges, all of the things can be addressed by women entrepreneurs through social enterprise solutions. So I think it's really great that, you know, this came together, that we had this discussion, that the anthology generates a dialogue. And I think also the inspirational leaders that we put forward can be triggers for change and can be inspirations for so many more women entrepreneurs, but also policymakers, right? Because and I'm speaking from the position of a World Bank economist, we write a lot of reports. So for example, when you say 82 is maybe not a representative sample, I mean, we have representative samples, but often what we miss in our report is representative leaders. And that's what you managed to do. And without, you know, compromising on the quality of conclusions, I think in many World Bank studies that are much more broad-based, we have similar findings. And so what we are trying to work towards, so we're called the bank, but we're not technically a bank. We're funding governments, not entrepreneurs. So it's been at times frustrating for me that we are 2 steps removed from direct financing of entrepreneurs. I had a good luck of being the program manager for Development Marketplace, and that program financed entrepreneurs directly, social entrepreneurs, women entrepreneurs in many countries. And so I had this privilege to working with social entrepreneurs directly, and we always strove for parity, for 50-50% among our grantees. But we are working with the government, and the question today was, what can we do about policy, right? So the question was about next steps. The question was about how to kind of address systemic challenges to women financing. We can finance entrepreneurs one by one, but there will be always one more who is not served and who is not provided with adequate access to finance. So how can we come to a systemic society-wide solutions to these problems? And some things are coming up. So interestingly enough, on policy, for example, even in countries where we managed to advocate jointly with local communities for policy changes. So for example, I work in DRC, where for years we tried to change the family code, which prevented women from buying land, from owning and opening businesses without the agreement of their spouses or their kind of male family supervisor. The law has been changed in 2016, but we still don't see it implemented. We still see women being asked in agencies where they're going to register their businesses, where the signature of your husband. And this goes, as you know, the anthology says, beyond just law. So we do need to change the law, but we also need to change behaviors, perceptions. We need to work with the communities. We need to identify these agents of change who are not only always women, who need to be supported. So community leaders, religious leaders, policymakers, there is a broad societal change that needs to be happening. And so, for example, we work in a number of countries with social marketing tools that got inspired by kind of Western models that seem to be working really well. Those social marketing tools, to be effective, they actually need those leaders and the concrete examples of entrepreneurs that you brought to the panel today. Another kind of initiative that I wanted to mention is a personal initiative training. There was a lot of discussion about, you know, how women lack self-awareness, motivation. Maybe sometimes, you know, they are very capable, but the self-assurance and kind of the proactivity that drives entrepreneurship needs to be strengthened. So the World Bank, jointly with research institutions in Germany, developed, its University of Lithuania and NGO MOVE, developed the personal initiative training, which has been evaluated. It was implemented and evaluated in a number of countries, and that training really helps to tackle the behavior, the motivation and behavior and proactivity aspects of women entrepreneurs. And so we ran that training for both men and women entrepreneurs, and actually it's much more impactful for women entrepreneurs. So the profits of women entrepreneurs after this training almost double, whereas for men it's just a 20% increase, which is still good, but you know, we know that women do need that behavioral change, mental shift to become better entrepreneurs. We also started doing that training for women and their spouses. So cognizant that, you know, this change needs a societal range, we were trying to engage other actors. So now we will be doing in DRC, Democratic Republic of Congo, we will be doing this personal initiative training for women entrepreneurs and their spouses at the same time, and see if that improves the effect and if it has kind of a broader also community effect in this country. And just a couple of other examples in terms of kind of what can we do in the time of COVID. There was an absolutely relevant kind of remark about the disproportionate effect of COVID pandemic on women entrepreneurs. The situation is already extremely difficult for them in many countries, especially in Africa. Well, COVID tripled their workloads in the families, and so we see that the women entrepreneurs, their businesses were disproportionately affected. So we were trying to kind of play around on the margins, so subsidies, temporary relief, financing, and one of the aspects that seemed to work fairly well is that in many countries, for example, DRC, again, so that's a country where I currently work, Burundi, women wanted to work from their homes because they were kind of, they needed to take care of their families, but they didn't have the tools to do that. I have the luxury to join you virtually from my home because I have good internet connections and all the digital tools at my disposal. They did not. So we started distributing simple cell phones, smart cell, like cheaper versions of smartphones, and training women on digital tools and technology they can use to continue the activities and still kind of take care of their families. And that seems to have an effect, and I think that might have a good effect beyond the pandemic. I think building back better is a fantastic slogan, because I think we do need to help women entrepreneurs to catch up on uses of technologies, and we know that maybe that pandemic gave us that boost and that awareness about we need to make sure that women are free or relieved of their family duties to be better entrepreneurs and more active entrepreneurs, and we definitely need to power them with digital tools as well, and that can help in the future. I will stop there, but thank you very much. Again, this is a fantastic effort, and I very much enjoyed to be part of this session. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Natalia Gabitova, for sharing your final remarks and reflections on this anthology. And I'd like to extend my heartfelt thanks to all contributors. This has been such a fantastic project, and I'm extremely proud of my colleagues at Global Utmaning, and of course of Reach for Change, led by Sofia Breitholtz here, and the work from Ida to Johansson. Wonderful collaboration, wonderful output, and I really, really look forward to reading the anthology on my way back home to south of Sweden on a train later on. And of course you can download it from the website, Global Utmaning, and I'm sure also from Reach for Change website. And we'll see what happens, what comes along after this. Of course, if there are any big financiers listening in, you know what to do. This is a fantastic work that's been done, and it needs to be, it needs to continue, that's for sure. So take care and keep pushing for more opportunities, removing the obstacles for female entrepreneurs. Bye-bye.